This is your next essay for College and the Schools, Composition 1, Writing 1120 in the UMD Bulletin. This begins the next assignments that are actually the more college-like in essence and more difficult assignments that you'll do for this class, as they are not as straightforward as some of them and they require more effort and, to be honest, more original thinking. So now is the time to focus and get ready because these assignments expect more of you. So this is your critical analysis of a source. You are going to do just what it says. Take one of your sources and analyze it critically. Many of you see the word critically and you assume that you have to say something negative. You have to criticize. It does not necessarily need to be negative. Critiquing sometimes means that you just go through all the components of the essay, of the article for the essay, though part of that could be any negatives that you find. It's important that you pay close attention to these directions because previous experience in my college and the schools classes, the wheels came off the wagon for some people because they just didn't want to think thoroughly. So what you'll do is find some sort of text that's relevant to your research question. It makes no sense to do this for something that's not part of it. There's about a 4 to 5 page requirement, I guess would be a word, but generally speaking, there aren't very good source analysis of very short articles. The more you have, the better. And when you do that, then you will analyze it. You will have an introductory paragraph, at least 3 developmental paragraphs, and conclusion. And these basically will be the form for your critical analysis. It does not have to be 5 paragraphs. You can have 5 developmental paragraphs if that's how you choose to break down your analysis. It's completely up to you. It's this last part here that's most important. Whether you can believe it or not, some of you just assume that if you find an article either on the internet or even in one of our databases, that the second it's there must be factual, it must be true. And this is a concerning fact that sometimes you seem to be somewhat blind to potential bias, or to sometimes that articles just aren't written well. And it's very important that you learn to analyze reading critically and to be able to see what's good and bad about a particular source, because in this class and in real college, when you hit the university next year, you're not just evaluated on having a source or sources, you're evaluated on the quality and depth of sources that you have. So it's important you learn this skill now. There's a series of suggestions here. I'm not going to read through all of them. I'm not going to require that you do any of them. What I'm going to say is that it's probably helpful if you did read through them and tried to follow these lists of questions 1 through 7 here, because they kind of take you step through step what you're going to be asked to do. Are you required to? Am I going to hang around over your shoulder, come to your home, lurk in your window and watch you do this? Obviously not. I'm being sarcastic. But I've seen this assignment done before. Maybe it'd be a good idea to follow these suggestions. The only requirement is that when you do hand this in, I get an actual copy of your source. Now, through Google Classroom, it would be easiest if you just gave me the link to the article, or if it's something from one of our databases, you could save it as a PDF and upload it to Google Classroom, because it's helpful if I get to see the article too. So here's some ideas to ponder, and this is number 1. You probably should see what the writer's thesis is, like specifically, what are they contending? I mean, that's the number 1 part that you have to pay attention to when you get a source. Like, what are they trying to prove? Because what they're trying to prove then has a complete effect on the information that they choose to include within their article. Obviously, if it lines up with how you feel, you know then that you're going to be finding information that will be of assistance to proving your point. If it's contradictory to what you think, that's not such a bad thing, because now you get to see what the other side is. So what exactly is the writer's thesis? I put here to write your own summary of that argument, to put it into words, but again, not required. Second part, physically, like how's it put together? Does it have a clear introductory paragraph, transitions, a concluding paragraph? Is it organized well? This is an area of critique. I've seen it before where there's a scholarly journal that's incredibly well written in terms of research, but it's put together in such a haphazard and disorganized way that it actually becomes a hindrance to it. So maybe you want to look at the actual writing of it, the physical form of how it's put together. Maybe you would say it's put together so well, so easy to follow, you're critiquing it positively. Potentially you'd say it's disorganized, and because of that, it didn't lend itself to finding information quickly and effectively. You're critiquing it. Obviously, next then, what are the main claims that are going to support this thesis? You're breaking the article down, much like people would do when I go to grade your paper. You state some sort of a claim and you should be breaking it down by arguments. What are their main arguments? What are the main supports? Try to break them down and see if there's any way where it says to find evidence quickly. Is it organized in such a way? Wouldn't it be nice if all articles were like this, where somehow it was organized with topic sentences or headings, like I asked you to do in the division classification essay, where you could go through it quickly and find what you need exactly when you need it? Do they do that? Again, we're getting to, are there supports? Is there evidence for these supports? And is it organized effectively? This is next, and this is probably one of the more important ones. What's done and what's done poorly and what's done well. Look closely. Like, what about this article is poorly done? You can't say it's a bad article. That's too bland. That's too general. That's too childish. If you're going to say it's a poorly done article, what specifically? Start making a list. Is it the lack of a clear thesis? Is it a lack of organized research and a lack of research in general? Number 6. It's the last part here that I really want you to think about. It says keep your eyes open for evidence of slant or bias, conscious or unconscious. Obviously, if you look something up, you need to be looking into potentially who the author is. Sometimes they give you a bio of the person. I'm sticking with this topic just because it's happening right now while I'm doing this lesson, the whole turmoil in Iraq. If you read an article that was written by a former military person, there's potential for bias both ways. Perhaps this is a very gung-ho military person, someone who would like to get back into the battle scene. Obviously, there'd be bias, whether they mean that or not, unconscious or conscious. It could be on the other side. Maybe it's someone who was actually on the ground in Iraq for our first time going to war there. And they're war weary, it's called. They don't want to go back. That would obviously have a bias. Look closely at how it's written. Does the information seem to be skewed too much? Which is what I'm asking you to avoid also when you write yours. That's why we did the comparison contrast essay, that you're looking to both sides. Bias or slant, conscious or unconscious. And then obviously then decide upon the major topics to develop in your analysis. So you're going to have an intro, and then what are the main areas, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many, that you're going to critique this on, positive, negative, or a combination of both. By the end of this then, I should have a firm understanding if this was a well done article or a poorly done article and for what reasons. You do need to read it closely then. You have to highlight, you have to go through and make some decisions. This is your source analysis of a source essay. This will also be helpful then when it comes time for your argumentative, your final research paper, because you've picked apart a source. You should know all the best information, or you should know, yes, I would use this source, or no, you wouldn't. In a perfect world, you would do this for all of your sources, but again, I'm not making you write a paper for all of those. Should you have any questions on this, you can obviously get in touch with me through Google Classroom or ask me in class, and we will go from there.